Hello, my dear students. Welcome to Sankalp Learning Classes. Today, we are discussing the important questions from the life processes chapter. So, that is 3 mark and 4 mark questions. Okay. I hope so. This video that will be helpful for you people to prepare the board exam. Okay. Yes. Let us start with the first question. Observe the given below figures. So you can see the figure 1 and 2 and read the question properly. Which figure indicates the massive amount of exchange of gases? Y. B. Name the parts X and Y. What is the function of the part X here? So this structure, so that indicate the open stomata and this is the closed stomata, right? So this is the open stomata and this is the closed stomata here. Which figure indicates the massive amount of exchange of gases? Y. So figure 1, that is the open stomata, that indicates the massive amount of exchange of gases because so it is open. The guard cells, they are in bean shape and there is a stomatal pore, so that help for the exchange of the gases here. But in the okay, name the parts X. So here this X that represents the X is the guard cell. X is the guard cell. Then Y, that is the stomatal pore. Y is the stomatal pore. Okay. Then what is the function of the X? What is the function of the guard cell that helps to the opening and closing of the stomata? Opening and closing of stomata. Okay, so this is the answer for this question. Okay, please note down the question, one of the important question for your exam. Which are the factors essential for photosynthesis? Mention the events that occur during this process and represent this process by balanced chemical equation. Which are the factors essential? That is carbon dioxide, the sunlight, water and minerals, and the chlorophyll pigment that is present inside the leaves of the plant. So these are the factors essential for the photosynthesis. Mention the events that occur during this process and represent this equation by balanced chemical equation. So what are the events that occur during the photosynthesis? Absorption of light energy by chlorophyll, conversion of light energy to chemical energy, and splitting of water molecules into hydrogen and the oxygen. Splitting of water molecules into hydrogen and the oxygen. Then the reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrates. Absorption of light energy. Then conversion of carbohydrate light energy to the chemical energy and splitting of water molecules, then reduction of carbon dioxide to the carbohydrates. So these are the 3 steps involved in the events that occur in the photosynthesis. Then here you have to represent this in a balanced chemical equation. Just try to CO2 plus H2O, that is C6 H12O6 plus H2O plus O2. Here 6 carbon atoms are there, so 6 CO2, 12 hydrogen, 12 plus here oxygen, so I will add the 12 H2O. Then here also 6 H2O, 6 those are 12. Here also 12, 12, 24. Here also 12 twos are 24 hydrogen. Then check the oxygen, 6 plus 6 plus 12 plus 14. Here 12 plus 6. Here I will add the 6 here. Yes. 18 oxygen. Yes. So this is the sunlight and the chlorophyll pigment. So this is the balanced chemical equation. So that you have to write. Okay. Next question. How does transportation of water takes place over the heights in a plant? Explain. How the transportation of water takes place. In the xylem tissue and vessels and tracheids of the roots, stems and leaves are interconnected and they form a continuous water conducting channels reaching all the parts of the plant. Then the roots of the plants, they absorb the water, and the water when it enter into the soil, where due to the difference in the concentration, so the water that enter into the roots of the plants, then to remove the concentration difference, this means there is a steady movement of water into roots of the xylem, creating the column of water that is steadily pushed upwards. Okay, so that is the uh, main thing where the transportation of the water takes place. And evaporation of water molecules from the cells of the leaf creates the suction which pulls the water from the xylem cells of the roots. So that is the suction pressure. So due to the suction pressure, the water again enter into the xylem and that moves towards the height of the plants. So that is the answer. One of the very important question. So repeatedly they ask the conduction of water and the conduction of the food materials in the plant body. Next question. Explain the process of digestion in the small intestine of a man. Okay, so the complete digestion of the carbohydrates, fats, and the proteins takes place in the small intestine. In the first step, the small intestine, which receives the bile juice. Just shortly I will write bile juice, which is secreted from the liver, and this bile juice that is enter to the small intestine through the bile duct, and which acts on the fat which is present in the small intestine, fat which convert the fat, large globules of fat, large globules of long chain fat into small globules, of fat, which helps to the digestion of the fat. Okay, so that is the first step. The second step, the small intestines receives the pancreatic juice from the pancreas. It also receives the pancreatic juice from the pancreas, which contain the enzyme, that is lipase, which act on the, which helps to the fat digestion. The small globules of fat further digested by the lipase enzyme, and the trypsin that helps in the digestion of the protein, further digestion of the protein. Okay, and in the third step, the walls of the small intestine, they contain some glands. They releases the intestinal juice. Walls of the small intestine, intestinal juice, and this intestinal juice that also contains the enzymes that helps to the conversion of finally the carbohydrate, that convert into glucose, and protein that convert into amino acid, and fats they convert into fatty acids and glycerol. So in these three steps you have to mention properly and what are the enzymes involved and what happens in that step. Okay, so if you write these all steps, then it will be very good and you will get the good marks. Okay, next question. Describe the structure and functioning of nephrons. So one of the very important question, the structure of nephron, the diagram of nephron, that is also very important in this question. Some substances in the initial filtrate, what are the functions of nephrons? That is glucose, amino acids, and the salts. The major amount of water they selectively reabsorbed as the urine flows along the tube, and the amount of water reabsorbed depends on how much excess water there is in the blood and how much dissolved waste there should be excreted. Okay, then the urine forming in each kidney eventually enter the long tube, the ureter, which connects to the kidney with the urinary bladder. The urine is stored in the urinary bladder until the pressure of the expanded bladder leads to the urge to pass it out to the urethra. Then the bladder is muscular and which is under the nervous control. As a result, it can usually control the urge of the urinate. So like this, there is a so very important, the structure and function of the nephrons. Next question. Why is the diffusion insufficient to meet the oxygen requirements of the multicellular organisms like humans? Why is the diffusion is insufficient to meet the oxygen requirements of the multicellular organisms like humans? Here, the diffusion in the multicellular organisms like humans, all the body cells are not in the direct contact with the surrounding environment. Therefore, every cell of the body will not get the oxygen as per the need by the process of diffusion from the environment. Therefore, the diffusion is insufficient to meet the oxygen requirements of the multicellular organisms. Okay, so that is the answer for this question. Next one. How are the fats digested in our bodies? Where does this process takes place? how are the fats digested in our bodies. Okay, so first step, what you have to explain. Fats are digested in the small intestine. Mainly, the fats are digested in the small intestine. The small intestine gets bile juice and pancreatic juice, respectively, from the liver and the pancreas. The bile salts, so that break down the large fat globules that already explained into the smaller globules so that pancreatic enzymes can easily act on them. So, this process takes place in the small intestine. The large globules of fat that break down into small, then the pancreatic enzymes, they act on the this fat, so that is a lipase enzyme act on the fat for the conversion of the fat takes place. Then finally the enzymes present in the small intestinal juice that convert the fat into fatty acids and glycerol. So final product you should mention, that is fatty acid. Finally it is converted into fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so that is the answer. Next question. What product is formed in the first step that takes place in the cytoplasm during the respiration in animals? Write any two differences between the aerobic and the anaerobic respiration. Okay. So here the glucose that will, in the first step of the breakdown of the glucose, it will convert into pyruvate molecule. Then write any two differences between the aerobic and the anaerobic respiration. Already we have discussed this, the difference between the aerobic and the anaerobic respiration. Here, aerobic respiration, where the breakdown of the glucose takes place in the presence of oxygen. Anaerobic, where the breakdown of the glucose takes place in the absence of the oxygen. Then the large amount of energy is released in case of the aerobic respiration. Compared to the aerobic respiration, little energy is produced, small amount of energy is produced in case of the anaerobic respiration. Okay. Then what are the end products that you can write? What are the end products of the this aerobic respiration and the anaerobic respiration that you can write for the 3 marks? Okay. Next question. In what form are the waste products stored in the old xylems of plants? How do the products of photosynthesis transport to all the parts of the plant? Here in what form? That is resins and gums. In the form of resins and gums. Resins and gums. So that is stored in the old xylems of the plants. Then question number B. How do products of photosynthesis transport to all the parts of the plant? So this question we are discussing in the next question. Okay. So how the phloem tissue that transport the product of the photosynthesis, that is food materials, that we have to explain. So this question is repeatedly asked question, how do the products of photosynthesis transport to all the parts of the plant? That is one of the important question. Next, we are discussing the 4-mark questions. Okay, so one of the important question section, that is 4-mark questions. Compare the functions of xylem tissue with that of the phloem tissue. Explain the process of exchange of gases that takes place through the stomata in plants. Compare the xylem and the functions of the phloem, xylem and phloem. Here, xylem and the phloem. Xylem, that is meant for the transportation of water. Here, phloem, that is meant for the transportation of the food materials, that is translocation of the food materials and the soluble products of the amino acids. So that is the main function of the phloem. Here, xylem that transport the water in the single direction. Xylem transport the water in the single direction, but phloem that transport the water in the in any directional, means the phloem that transport the water in a different direction. Okay, so that is the one of the important point. Here, xylem that uses the simple physical forces to transport the water to the leaves of the plant. Simple physical forces are used to push the water towards the leaves, but here phloem, for the transportation of water, here phloem that uses the ATP, so which use the energy from the ATP for the transportation of the food material. So like this, you should write the differences between the xylem and the phloem. Next question. Explain the process of exchange of gases that takes place through the stomata in plants. Here, exchange of gases that takes place through the stomata. When the guard cells are open, this bean shape, the stomatal pore is open, and during the photosynthesis, carbon dioxide enter inside the plant's body and oxygen is removed. During the respiration, carbon dioxide that is removed from the plants and oxygen is taken inside during the respiration process. So if there is any scarcity of water, or sometimes the stomata is closed due to the guard cells. Guard cells, they close the stomata. Okay, so like that, there is a exchange of the gases takes place. Next question. Yes, so this is the how these are the tiny pores. So where the exchange of gases takes place. So which contain the guard cells and which control the opening and closing of stomata. Next question. How is the structure of human heart supportive in transporting the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood? Explain. Second one, in humans, how is the digested food absorbed by the blood? Mention the function of blood in the transporting necessary materials. So each questions, so that is for the 2 mark. Yes, first one. The right and the left region of the heart are separated by the walls of the muscle called septum. The right ventricle pumps the blood to the lungs for reoxygenation through the pulmonary arteries. The right semilunar walls close and prevent the blood from the flowing back into the heart. So the human heart that contains the septum, and there is a semilunar walls that prevents the blood from flowing back into the heart. In human beings, how is the digested food absorbed by the blood? The digested food that is absorbed by the blood, mention the function of blood in transporting the necessary materials. The villi, which is present in the small intestine, that absorb the materials, that absorb the nutrients through the villi, that is transported to the blood. Then here, plasma transports the carbon dioxide, food, water, and the some nitrogenous waste, mainly food and water. RBC that transports the oxygen. Okay, so important question. Please note down the question. Next question. Explain the digestion of food materials in the stomach and the small intestine. Okay, so that is also a 4-mark question. Explain the digestion of food materials in the stomach and the small intestine. Here, in the stomach, how the digestion takes place. Here, there is a gastric glands, walls of the stomach that contain the gastric glands. And these gastric glands, they secrete the HCl, mucus, and the pepsin. Pepsin break down the proteins. Hydrochloric acid creates the acidic medium which facilitate the action of enzyme pepsin. The mucus protects the inner lining of the stomach from the action of the acid under the normal conditions. So that is the digestion takes place in the stomach. Okay. Then the digestion in the small intestine, already we have studied this, right? The digestion in the small intestine. Please note down this answer so that will be helpful. Yes, next question. Explain the role of xylem and phloem tissues in the transportation of materials in the plants. So xylem tissues and the phloem tissues. Yes, already in the last question, the same was asked, that is explain the transportation of the food materials, asked for the 2 marks. Yes, now we are going to study this. In the xylem tissue, vessels, tracheids, and the root stems, leaves are interconnected, form a continuous water conducting channels. And here, root cells contact with the soil, actively take up the ions. This creates a difference in the concentration of these ions between the root and the soil. Water therefore moves into the root from the soil to eliminate this difference. Then this means there is a steady movement of water into the xylem, creating a column of water that is steadily pushed upwards. Okay. Then the phloem. So the material, like you have to mention the suction pressure. So that also helpful for the loss of water through the stomata that creates the suction pressure in plants that helps for the absorption of the water, so that increases the absorption of water in the xylem, so that the which create the column of water that push the water towards pushed upwards. Here, the transportation of the food in the phloem. The material like sucrose is transferred into phloem tissue using the energy from the ATP. This creates the osmotic pressure of the tissue, causing the water to move into it. This pressure moves the material in the phloem to the tissues which have less pressure. This allows the phloem to move the material according to the plant's need. So that is the answer. Which molecule is formed during the first step of cellular respiration? By the breakdown of glucose molecule in cytoplasm. Mention the types of respiration, write any two differences between them. So this question already we have solved in the 3 mark questions, right? So please note down the question. Same type of the question can be asked. Next question. Mention the events that occur during the photosynthesis in plants. What are the methods used by the plants to get rid of excretory products? Mention the events that occur during the photosynthesis in plants, and you have to write the what are the methods used by the plants to get rid of excretory products. Here, absorption of light energy by chlorophyll, conversion of light energy to chemical energy, and splitting of water molecules into hydrogen and the oxygen, then reduction of carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. So already we have studied this. Then, so these are the 3 steps involved in the events occurring in the photosynthesis of plants. Then, so how they get rid of the waste products? In plants, the gaseous waste products produced during the respiration, carbon dioxide, and the photosynthesis, so that is also oxygen is also waste product during the photosynthesis, are removed through the stomata. And excess of water that is removed through the stomata. And some waste products stored in leaves and removed when the leaves are dry and fall off. Some waste products stored in vacuoles. Other waste products are stored in resins and gums, especially in old xylem. Plants also excrete some waste substances into soil around them. Okay, so that is the answer. Next question. Draw the diagram showing the structure of nephron and label the glomerulus. So one of the important diagram from this chapter, stomata and excretory system of human and the nephron. Yes, this is the structure of nephron. One of the important question. So all the parts labeling of these all parts, that is very important. Next question. Draw the diagram showing the structure of human excretory system and label the ureter. So this is also one of the important question. Yes, you have to label the ureter and practice all these of labelings. Next question. Draw the diagram showing the sectional view of the human heart and label the following parts, that is aorta and the chamber of the heart that receives the deoxygenated blood. Which chamber of the heart receives the deoxygenated blood? That is the right atrium that receives the deoxygenated blood. So this diagram you have to practice. Okay. Next question. Explain the stages of double circulation of the blood in humans. So that is one of the very important question. So what happens in the double circulation? Oxygen rich blood from the lungs comes to the thin walled atrium upper chamber of the heart on the left, that is called as left atrium. Okay, so the oxygenated blood from the lungs that enter into the left chamber of the heart, that is the left atrium. So the blood vessels which carry the blood to the left atrium, that is called as the pulmonary veins. Then when the left atrium contract, so at that time left ventricle, that is in the relax, so the when the left atrium contracts, the blood enter into the left ventricle. Okay, the blood that enters to the left ventricle here. When the muscular left ventricle contracts in its turn, the blood pumped out of the different parts of body through the aorta. So when the left ventricle contracts, the blood that moves into the aorta and that is moved to the different parts of the body, that is the oxygenated blood. Then the next step, deoxygenated blood comes from the body to the upper chamber on the right and the chamber, that is the right atrium, as it relaxes. And the right atria contracts, the corresponding lower chamber, the right ventricle dilates and the blood transfer to the right ventricle. Yes, here the deoxygenated blood from the vena cava, so that transfer the chamber of the blood that receives the deoxygenated blood, that is the right atrium. When it contracts, the blood that moves towards the right ventricle. Okay, so when the right ventricle contracts, the blood that moves inside the pulmonary arteries and that moves to the lungs for the purification. Deoxygenated blood means that is the that contains the carbon dioxide, hence the blood moves for the purification. So these are the steps involved in the double circulation. Here the blood flows through the twice in one cycle. So to complete the one cycle, the blood flows twice in. So that is called as a double circulation. Okay, so that is the important question for your board exam. Next question. Briefly explain the formation of urine in the nephrons. How food materials are transported in higher plants? Explain. Here this how the food materials are transported in higher plants. That is the same question. How the food materials transported in phloem. Here how the urine form in the nephrons. So the nephrons, they have the specialized structure that is called as Bowman's capsule. So the blood vessels which carry the blood to the Bowman's capsule. And here the purification of blood takes place. The impurities or nitrogenous waste and some essential materials also, they will pass to this tube in the form of filtrate, and the remaining blood, pure blood, also transported back to the heart, our body. And when it flows in this tube, the essential materials like some amino acids, sugars, and water molecules, they are reabsorbed. So there is a reabsorption takes place when it moves into the tubular part of the nephron. Yes, that is exactly called tubular part of the nephron. The some materials, they are absorbed, water and amino acids, sugar. So these are all the they need to absorb in this tubular part of the nephron. Then the remaining nitrogenous waste that pass into this tubular part and open into a collecting duct. Okay, so that is called as a collecting duct. The collecting duct together that opens into the ureter. Okay, the collecting duct that opens into the ureter, and the ureter that carries the urine to the urethra. So where the storage of the urine takes place here. From the kidney, the ureter. So these are the ureters. They carry the blood to the urinary bladder. Sorry, urinary bladder. This is the urinary bladder. Then it moves out through the urethra. So like this, the formation of urine takes place in the nephron. Next question. Explain the double circulation of the blood in human beings. The double circulation of the blood. So already we have explained this. This is also important question, repeatedly asked question it is. Here, the double circulation of the blood takes place in the human beings and all mammals which are having the four chambers of heart. The oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood that moves separately. Oxygenated blood that enters to the atria, then into the ventricle, then aorta, how it contracts and how it helps to the movement of the blood in the aorta, then it transport to the cells. Then again the deoxygenated blood, that is carbon dioxide containing blood that enter the right atria, then right ventricle, then that move that moves to the lungs for its purification. That is the double circulation. To complete one cycle, the blood flows twice in a cycle. So that is called as a double circulation. Here, the plants, what are the different excretory strategies found in plants? So there are different strategies like through the stomata, then through the old leaves, then old xylem in the form of resins and gums, and through the soil. So these all are the excretory strategies found in plants. Next question. How are the functions of arteries, veins, and capillaries are interrelated in the circulation of blood? How are the functions of arteries, veins, and capillaries are interrelated here? Arteries are the vessels carry blood away from the heart for the various organs of the body. Since the blood emerges from the heart under the high pressure, the arteries have the thick wall. Okay, so they are the blood vessels. They carry the blood to the different parts of the body. Veins, they collect the some deoxygenated the veins means they bring the blood to the heart, so they do not have the thick walls. Then what do you mean by capillaries? On reaching the organ or tissue, the artery divides into smaller and smaller vessels. Here can explain like this. So this is the artery which carries the blood. So just when it reaches the organ, okay, so these arteries, they break into smaller and smaller uh, structures that is called as capillaries to reach the each and every cell. Okay, so they reach the cells like this, just for your imagination, and each cells that perform the respiration and releases the carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide is carried by the same type of the blood vessels. So that is also called as capillaries, and these capillaries, they open into a blood vessel that is called as a vein. Okay, so these all capillaries which are carrying the deoxygenated blood, they open into a blood vessel that is called as a vein. So here these arteries, veins and the capillaries, their function is interconnected. What are the different ways in which glucose is oxidized to provide the energy in various organisms? Here, the glucose that is oxidized in three ways, that is aerobic respiration, that is in case of in the presence of oxygen. Here, aerobic respiration and the anaerobic respiration. In the first step, the glucose that is partially oxidized and form the two molecules of the pyruvate. Okay, so it takes place in the cytoplasm, very importantly. Then breakdown of this pyruvate, that have the different mechanism. Anaerobic respiration, that is in case of the yeast, the pyruvate that is converted into ethanol, and the carbon dioxide in the absence of the oxygen. Okay, so in case of the scarcity of oxygen, sometimes our muscles, they will also perform the anaerobic respiration where the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid. Okay, so that is the breakdown of the glucose molecules in different cells. Then aerobic respiration, it takes place in mitochondria where the pyruvate is completely oxidized to form the oxygen, in the presence of oxygen, to form the carbon dioxide, water, and the large amount of energy is released. So this is the different ways of the glucose is oxidized to provide the energy for the various organisms. How are the lungs designed in human beings to maximize the area for exchange of gases? Here, the exchange of gases takes place between the blood of the capillaries that is surrounded by the alveoli. And the gas is present in the alveoli. Thus, the alveoli is the site for the exchange of the gases. And the lungs get filled up with the air during the process of inhalation, and the ribs are lifted up in the diaphragm flattened. So this is how the air is rushed inside the lungs, fills the numerous alveoli present in the lungs. Each lungs contains 300 to 350 million alveoli. These numerous alveoli increases the surface area for gaseous exchange, making the process respiration more efficient. How is the amount of urine produced is regulated? Here, here, the urine production, how it is regulated, for this question you have to mainly you have to include this. When the when the filtrate that enter into the tubular part of the nephron, so there is a some here, mainly this part. Okay, sorry. Some substances in the initial filtrate such as glucose, amino acids, salts and major amounts of water are selectively reabsorbed as the urine flows along the tube. The amount of water reabsorbed depends on how much excess water is there is in the body and on the how much of dissolved waste is there to be excreted. So that is the main thing, how the production of urine is regulated. So this is the important one. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Dear students, so I will stop the class here. I hope these all 4 mark questions that will be helpful for your board exam. Thank you.